Oh, it's finally time for us to end the classic era of Resident Evil. Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Play Resident Evil Remake / 2002, which, as the name would suggest, is the remake of the original Resident Evil for the GameCube originally, although it did get ported to the Wii as well as PCs and other consoles down the line.
Resident Evil.
It's always made me laugh how that's clearly just the exact same read they had of that they would later use again in Resident Evil 4. So starting off, we actually do have a difficulty select. Mountain climbing and hiking. Hiking is easy mode, mountain climbing is normal mode. Difficulties largely come down to how much health enemies have, where they're placed, and also whether or not there's more or less ammo and healing items spread about. And now time for our character selection. So, several years back, I did an LP of the PS1 version and did that as Jill, and I said whenever I do the remake, I'd at least start it as Chris. So that's what we're going to be doing here, but brass tacks differences. Jill moves faster and has more inventory slots, 8 versus Chris's 6. She has a lockpick that can open doors, whereas Chris has a lighter to light certain things on fire, has, I believe, higher health, and I want to say has a better accuracy rating at getting critical hits, but I'm not entirely certain about that one. I'll do more research for post-edit me, of course, as well, but I'll go over more distinct differences as we go.
Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone, situated in northwest Raccoon City, where we are searching for the helicopter of our compatriots, Bravo Team, who disappeared during the middle of their mission.
Haven't found it yet?
No, not yet, Brad. Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in Raccoon City. There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. The Bravo team was sent in to investigate, but we lost contact.
Look, Chris!
Bravo team's helicopter was a derelict. Save for the remaining body of Kevin. We continued our search for the other members, and it turned into a nightmare.
Just puppies, they want head pats.
Hey! Brad! Where the hell's he going? Chris, this way. Make for that mansion!
Enter the survival horror.
There are only 3 S.T.A.R.S members left now. Captain Wesker, Jill, and myself. We don't know where Barry is.
Is everyone all right?
Barry. Where's Barry?
He's...
No. What was that?
I'll go and check it out.
All right. Jill and I will stay and secure this area.
Chris? Take care.
Yeah.
And thus the game begins. They do more to tutorialize how this game works compared to the original game. In fact, you have a manual in your files to start that really gives you the basic controls. But for our purposes here as an LP channel, it controls exactly the same as Resident Evil 0, barring the use of certain things. Here's Chris's lighter. It's a brass lighter coated with gold. We'll be able to use this to light certain things on fire, and it doesn't take up an inventory slot, thankfully. Which, considering Chris only has 6 and he only starts with a knife, you're pretty limited on that. Tank controls here are still a thing, though I think the later re-releases of this on modern consoles give you a modern control scheme that just allows you to move a direction with the analog stick, but frankly, that just never feels right to me. You know, I wonder if there's something genre-defining right behind this corner. God, the way they adapted that looks so goddamn good. So this is our first zombie. I'm gonna call him Jerry. We're not gonna worry about him because, frankly, there's no reason to at the moment. And the moment we come back into this room, he's not gonna be back at that body anyway. So, we found some of the evil in this residence. So let's go see if Wesker and Jill can help us with anything, because, we don't got a good weapon to fight the undead.
Wesker? Jill? Where did they go?
And thus the game properly begins now that we have our first firearm. So just to go over how controls work for weapons in this game. You ready whatever weapon you have equipped with the R button on the GameCube, and attack with the A button. The knife here is very limited, and I don't really recommend it. The gun is much better, and notably, you can also auto-aim with onto the nearest enemy by pressing the L button. So, I was swiping the knife there. That wasn't just to show it off. Notably, you can try to leave through the front door of the mansion, and if you do that, there's a jump scare where one of the Cerberuses, the dogs that attacked us, try to get in. And in the original, that's where that ended. If you do that, I think 2 or 3 times here in the remake, one of the Cerberus actually gets into the main hall.
That gunfire. I'm counting on you to investigate, Chris.
You got it, Wesker.
And given we're going to use the main hall as a very common thoroughfare from one destination to the other here in the mansion, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to showcase that. The corpse of your comrade, Kenneth. It looks like he's holding something. It's the film that belonged to Kenneth. I need a video player to see what's recorded on it. Now, notably, in the original game, not only was that videotape not there, but you can investigate Kenneth's corpse for, I believe, 1 or 2 handgun magazines. That's not here anymore, at least on this difficulty. And also, this door wasn't here in the original game. Because Resident Evil Remake is one of the best kinds of remakes that honestly Capcom has a pretty good track record of doing, wherein the general silhouette of the adventure, both in terms of how the game plays and how it goes in canon, is the same. But they throw in new things to throw off or make the journey still interesting to veteran and returning players, but still make the game accessible to first-timers in a good way. On top of throwing in references to later games, since those didn't exist at the time of the original, of course. And because of that, even if you're very familiar with the original game, there's enough here that will actively really throw you off. So those are green herbs. Those are our base healing items. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but using 1 is good. Combining them into 2 doubles the efficacy, in that it's not just, I believe, the efficacy of 2 green herbs straight up. It's a little stronger than that off the top of my head. On top of that, that's much better for inventory space. Examining and combining items in your inventory is going to be a make or break for your inventory management, as that is the ultimate name of the game here, on top of routing your way through the various rooms in the mansion. On top of ammo conservation, actually, because this is one of the stricter games in the series. Not the strictest, but it's easy to overshoot the amount of enemies you're killing and go overboard. So I'll come to this room, grab this golden arrow, and examine the item screen. From the status screen, select an item and select Examine command. So you had to do this once or twice in the original game, but Remake and Zero do a lot with this, where you will not be able to progress unless you examine key items and take a look at what they might be able to be used. For instance, examining the golden arrow, the arrowhead looks like it can be removed. Thus, we now have the arrowhead key item we can use as a key elsewhere, made from peridot, sometimes referred to as poor man's emeralds. Now, technically speaking, if you want to progress like you did in the original game, you want to actually head east from the main hall once you get the handgun. But I came over here not only to get the golden arrow as soon as I could, but to unlock this door from this side so I can use it as a shortcut elsewhere so I don't have to just go from the floor below me again. Now, I like to think my routing for this game is decent enough, but notably, I haven't played this as much as the original Resident Evil or Resident Evil 2. I've played this probably more than any of the other classic Resis we've done, though. So if I seem like I'm taking a bit of a roundabout route, it's probably because either I want to get something else done first, or I'm just forgetting the shorter cut. Now here we have another new item, the dagger. Emergency evade. Using defense items such as daggers will allow you to escape momentarily when grabbed by an enemy. However, you'll not be able to escape when you're grabbed from behind. To equip a defense item, go to the status screen, then select an item on the defense item menu and use the command. If your defense item has been set to manual in the control settings, you must press L to use them. So now, one of the coolest things they add is that if you get grabbed from the front by a zombie when you have one of these 2 defense items equipped, you'll just auto-defend and take no damage, and it'll actively damage the enemies too. Both characters get access to the dagger, where if they get grabbed from the front, they just stab that into the zombie and they take damage. And notably, if you take their head off in any regard after that with a critical hit shot from your handgun or other weapons, I think you could actually pick it back up again. But after that, what defense items they get depends on which character it is. Chris here gets the flash grenades, where he can shove them into the zombie's mouth, and if he shoots it afterwards, the flash grenade goes off, taking their head off completely with it. Jill, on the other hand, gets the stun gun, which obviously she pokes them with and it stuns them. That notably has batteries, but thankfully those batteries don't take up inventory space. So now that I have the arrowhead, I'm heading towards the stairs here in the main hall, as they now added a door at the middle step. We want to go through here because this will key us in towards effectively our first long-term goal here for Resi Remake. Think of it as the equivalent as the wind crests and all that from the original game, or the chess pieces from Resident Evil 2. Welcome to the pretty small courtyard graveyard, and our goal is this tablet here in the back. A tomb engraved with a picture of an angel. There's an indentation in the shape of an arrowhead. Gee, I wonder what we use here. With this opening up the tomb, we'll be able to climb down the stairs and see what's actually in here. Though notably, the zombies cannot follow you down this staircase. They'll only stay up there in the upper area. That's not always going to be the case, because what were sometimes stairway room transitions in the original game are now actively fused as one room, and zombies can go down some stairs. A stone statue with a hole where the eyes should be. This one's got holes where the eyes, mouth, and mouth should be. Over here we got one where the nose should be. And finally, where the mouth should be. Huh. Ominous. Very ominous. The flames are burning brighter and higher. Looks like they'll overtake you any minute now. I certainly hope not. A book's fitted perfectly in the indentation. Meet the Book of Curse. Following inscription is carved into the indentation. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We now want to examine the Book of Curse and see what's going on with it. In fact, there might be something specific on the back. It's titled Book of Curse. There's a key embedded on the back cover. Will we remove it? And thus we get our first major mansion key, and now the Book of Curse itself actually becomes a file we can read. Book of Curse. The four masks. A mask that speaks no evil, a mask that smells no evil, a mask that sees no evil, and a mask that cannot speak, smell, or see evil. When all four fall into place, evil will awaken. So, there's 4 masks we need to find and place on the respective faces behind us right now. Hence the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We're going to be looking for these for a while, but notably, we also now have ourselves the sword key. In order to actually name the keys in this one, you need to examine the back of them. But that's actually one of the few cases where they just took that right out of the original. You just never needed to. Honestly, I think my first playthrough of the original Resident Evil, I just felt out which key went in which hole. Something to note about the zombies grabbing you, by the way. Them reaching for you with their arms actively works the way it should, in that, say there's an item on the ground and you bend down to pick it up. If a zombie tries to grab you during that, there's times they'll just reach right over your head and miss, which can be very nice and funny, but the big thing is zombies do have a bit of a cooldown on their attack. They won't immediately grab after they do the one grab because they've exerted themselves and they're like, oh god, I missed. So if you actually use that to your advantage in some cases, you can very easily get around the zombies. Mind you, in general, a single zombie in this game, barring extremely tight hallways, isn't that hard to get around. It's when they throw a lot at you in a small area, which this remake does relatively frequently. They definitely expand the amount of zombies that the mansion has from the original game in this remake. So welcome to the little gallery. We want to push this little dresser over towards the statue in the middle to grab what's in that jar, of course. But we also want to go investigate both the hallway over behind me as well as the door over there. They remakes a lot of item placements in this one, but this one's very true to the original. This is going to be our first map. As you explore the map, it gets filled in, but if a room is red and you've explored it, that means there's still an item for you to grab somewhere in there. But there are some rooms I just leave red because I don't either need the item that's in there or I always forget where it is. Because they do a better job of masking where items are. That's why they constantly have a sparkle on them. But sometimes if there's an item that's not entirely marked or it's hidden behind something, I'm just not going to remember where that is. Huh, well, this was a dead end. Well, we at least got ourselves another defense dagger. I think that's technically meant to be the first one you find overall. Namely, so you can use it on this zombie to get around them. Now, the auto versus manual setting for the defense items only really comes into play as useful to me on higher difficulties where you might want to save it for very specific zombies. But on a first playthrough, I just recommend having it on auto just so you don't need to worry about remembering to use it or not. We're safe from that zombie though, so time for just a nice, calm walk through this room, through this extraordinarily gorgeous lighting and kind of tacky wallpaper, but oh well, we got this dresser here we want to push. I wonder what that was. Okay, just to talk about it. So in the original game, and this is a case where they mess with veterans, when you come through this hallway the first time, 2 Cerberuses jump through the windows. That doesn't happen on your first several trips through this room here in the remake. I believe they specifically move that until you grab a very specific item. But this also gives us ample opportunity to actually push these 2 dressers or containers out of the way and grab the items that are below them. Notably, you can have the Cerberuses jump through a lot sooner as Jill than as Chris. Due to what's coming up in the next room. And also, I've always found the camera angle that you start this room with very funny, because it's just a straight-on camera angle of Chris or Jill. And something about it just feels like I walked into their YouTube channel. That door I'm ignoring, by the way, cannot be opened by Chris yet. We need an item to unlock it with him, but Jill's lockpick, I believe, allows her to open that automatically. Because that's a big thing for Jill. Not only does she have more inventory spaces, her lack of a special key type means that she has less inventory management to do to begin with. Another scare added to the remake if memory serves, but I want to just worm behind this guy and grab the old key. This is the type of key that allows us to open that door we ignored a moment ago, but I'm saving this specific old key for something else. I don't want to go grab what's in that room until a little bit later in the LP. Something to note though, because I didn't kill that zombie, revisiting this hallway now is a little bit more dangerous. As something the remake adds is that some zombies can actually move from one room to the next room if they're already kind of in a dead-end area to be a constant threat. And the way it works is a bit randomized. It really just depends on luck. Sometimes you'll run past a door like that and it'll jiggle. Sometimes it'll open slowly. Sometimes they'll slam the door open and they'll just be in that hall now. But they can't do it from every room to every room, only certain ones. Welcome to the East Wing Stairway. This is going to be one of our favorite rooms in the game. Something to note, the door that I entered from. In the original game, you could go through willy-nilly. Eventually, if you try to go through that door coming from this direction enough times here in the remake, that doorknob falls off, limiting your movement. Welcome to our first proper save room of the LP, though, and while it's largely familiar, I'll talk about what's in these after we read the note that's on the floor right here and talk about it. Special instructions when disposing of dead bodies. We have new information regarding those beings. They may appear to be dead, but in fact they are able to come back to life. However, there are ways to prevent them from becoming active again. Currently, there are 2 known methods to cease their resurrection. 1, incineration. 2, destruction of the head. If further methods are discovered, they will be notified immediately. Meanwhile, to those of you who still have the will to live, oil has been placed on the first floor of the mansion. Take as much as you need. You'll need something to light it with, which you'll need to find by yourself. So that is referring to a mechanic exclusive to Remake known as a Crimson Head. Effectively, when you kill a zombie in this series, if you don't know, they leave a pool of blood behind on the ground, indicating that they are in fact actually dead. And in the original game, if you left a room with a dead zombie and came back, the body would be gone to deload it. They gave some excuse for it in the manual. But here in the remake, they'll still be there. If you leave a body that's dead on the ground long enough, it will revive again as a Crimson Head, which is a faster, much more aggressive zombie that does a lot more damage. That also impacts just random dead bodies you find on the ground throughout the mansion. They're there to be traps that become Crimson Heads later. The ways you deal with them are twofold, either destroying their head with a critical hit headshot, or with a flash grenade or anything else you got, or incineration. That's why we got the fuel canteen here. If you kill a zombie, you can use the fuel canteen on it to cover them in oil, and then you can either use Chris's lighter that he has inherently, or a different lighter that Jill can find to burn the body and prevent them from becoming a Crimson Head. Notably, Jill's campaign exclusively has a grenade launcher weapon, and if you use the flame rounds you can find laying around the mansion with that on a zombie, they also prevent resurrection as a Crimson Head. I forget how long that resurrection tends to take. It might even depend on the zombie in question, honestly. But thus, not only do we have a more complicated mansion layout to deal with, we also now have a bit more of a time constraint if we want to get through more safely. With that said, as long as you're moving at a good click and realizing where things need to go quickly, as long as you've explored, you're likely not to see too many Crimson Heads on a playthrough. I average at around 2 or 3, but it is a threat and you need to take it seriously. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, we're going to continue exploring the east wing of the mansion before seeing where we're going to head afterwards. See you guys then.